What do you got for me?
What's wrong with you people?
I got nothing for you.
What's wrong?
You're not David. How y'all feel this morning? I feel rotten. That's how I feel. Well, that was enough for me. We could have had the benediction right there. That was so good.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to The Reformatory, the podcast for the local church and by the local church, and we are your local churchmen. My name is Josh, and I'm here, as always, with the man who needs no introduction, but we'll introduce him anyway, Captain Jack Barry. Jack, what's up, my man?
What's up?
What's happening?
Always a fun time. It was actually fun to hang out with you for a little bit, and just for that emergency pipe burster, toilet clog at Curves.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, so we got to see each other today.
Oh man,
I didn't know that was gonna. It was not on the. It was not on the docket for today.
Yeah,
but we had an emergency call that we had to come all the way down to Tacoma and do. And I hit you up on the way down, and we are like, "Hey, I'm going to be down here, man. We're like a couple minutes from you," and you were able to get away and got to see little Theo also. So that was pretty awesome. Took some pics.
Dude,
little Theo's getting big, dude.
Dude, Theo is more Reformed Baptist than Josh and I, and even Caleb. He has this cowl going on right now where he like looks at you and like squints, and like doesn't trust you, and it is like Reformed Baptist perfection, right there.
It really
people,
is.
So.
It really is. Yeah. He is. You can tell he's surrounded by
the
Reformed
hate.
Baptists.
The hate flows through you.
That's right.
Oh man,
it's like
so
I'm
funny.
joyful on the inside. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was good seeing you. I wish we could have stayed longer, hit the lounge or something like that. But I ended up having a very long day. I'm very tired, but happy to be sitting here doing radio with you, my friend. But,
as always.
Before we hop into our topic today, my friend, why don't you take us to the business and give us this week's Reformatory Cigar of the Week. New month, new stick. What do you got for us?
New month, new theme. So we're going off of the trotted pathway of doing brands. So I looked at all the M brands for cigars, and they are all big brands. And if anybody knows me, I do not want to review cigars that are big brand.
It must
named.
be boutique.
It must be boutique.
It
must be chic. You know,
it must be bougie.
It must be small batch.
That's right.
So we are going with May is for Mystery. It's kind of this whole vibe, right? When you were a kid, at least myself, when I was a kid in the 90s, when you got a multi-pack of Airheads, and you always had that mystery white Airhead in your pack, and it was always like, what is this? What does this taste like? What is this flavor? We want to give off that kind of a vibe, like
which
May
fair,
is for mystery.
I still don't know.
You know,
I still don't know what it is.
It's like anything. Honestly, it could have been anything. It could have been cherry. Sure. I remember time and time again, those Airheads tasted like different. The white ones tasted like different ones. So
it's true.
Definitely, we're trying to trick you on the mystery there. But anyway, May is for Mystery Month, as far as cigars go. But the caveat to that is that they all these cigars start with M.
Right.
Okay, so you're gonna have different brands, but all the cigars are gonna start with M. There might be a little bit of a theme going on here too. I didn't do that on purpose. It's just anyway. The first cigar right out of the gate for May is for Mystery is the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, the Mi Querida. And it's called the Mi Querida Tricky Traca. Dude, this guy, I'm not joking.
Ricky Chicky Trava.
Dude, Steve Saka, who's the owner of this, will make the most ridiculous names out of these cigars.
Yeah, he does.
So this is the number 448, and it's the smallest sizing of the cigar. So it is a pretty much a Nicaraguan puro. The wrapper is Connecticut broadleaf. I take that back. So the wrapper is Connecticut broadleaf, the binder is Nicaraguan, and the filler is Nicaraguan and Dominican Republic. So it's almost a Nicaraguan puro with, just those two little additions with the wrapper and some of the filler too.
Nice.
So it's 4x48. It's technically a petite Robusto. The reviews on this that I saw, very almost kind of like peppery, a little bit of earthiness, a lot of good kind of reviews on construction. Like it's not going to canoe and it's not going to go out on you, stuff like that. So that's good. Honestly, like it's so crazy because this cigar was ranked on Half Wheel, and we all know Half Wheel is a stickler for ranking cigars.
They are.
This was ranked an overall score of 93 on Half Wheel.
That's
a high score.
Yep.
So anyways, this is going to be quite the interesting smoke if you have it. Like I said, it's kind of medium to fuller body ish at times. And it's got kind of the earthiness, pepperiness, kind of black coffee kind of notes in there. So, I mean, I would say honestly, good morning cigar. To be quite honest, I always like kind of those kind of flavors in the morning. Josh, do you want to take a shot at what the MSRP is on this bad boy?
For a petite Robusto, I'm going $11.
MSRP.
Yeah.
$8 to $9.50.
I don't know if I've ever nailed one. One of these days I'm going to.
I think you have. It's just, but anyway, price is right.
That is the price
ratings are right.
Yeah.
Flavors are right.
100%.
Everything's looking good on this. Anyway, that is the first cigar of May is for Mystery. It's the Mi Querida. It's the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust Mi Querida Tricky Traca. Number 448 for y'all.
Ricky Tricky Truck. I love it. Jack, well done as always. Thank you for bringing only the choicest of cigars.
Simply the best.
That's right. Dude. You 100%. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Reformatory Cigar of the Week, and you know what to do. Go and smoke to the glory of God. All right, Jack. So today we're talking about the local church being a priority in your life.
Shocker.
Who would have guessed, right? But particularly in this episode, I put out a tweet a little while ago talking about how a good local church is worth moving for. Right. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about a good local church being an excellent reason to move. Now, there's a lot of factors that work into that, right? Current community, current local church, friends, family, work, right? Your own personal family, if you're married with kids or just married, right? All those things. A lot of factors, right? We're not going to be able to cover all the factors today, right? But I do think it is worth the discussion because in a time and place in America where I think solid local churches are becoming more scarce and that we might have more churches right now than we ever have as a nation. I think that's true. I would say solid biblical local churches are becoming harder and harder to find. At least that has been my experience in trying to find churches, not only for myself in the past, but for other people, as I have friends, moving to all parts of the country and looking for a church. I have found that it's become increasingly more difficult to find churches that I would be willing to sign off on as, this church has my recommendation. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And of course, you can only tell so much online, right? But it's getting hard. It's getting hard to find good local churches. And when you find a good one, when you find one that is theologically sound, right? Word centered, Christ centered, has a I would say a good and I would say necessary focus on building community within that local church. When you find that, it's almost like finding kind of a like jewel in the desert, right? You just want to hold on to it, right? And I would say, as you should. I think a good local church is a rare find, and when you find one, I think it's good and right that you center your life around it. I can't think of anything better to center our lives around than the local church, God's people, right? So we're going to talk about that today. And, both you and I have had probably more experience than we'd like to admit looking for local churches, right?
Oh, boy.
But I know that both of us have found it to be true that a good local church is worth shaping your life around. It's worth changing aspects of your life around in order to accommodate that specific local church. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, to add to kind of what you're looking for, I would say that a local church needs to exhibit both gospel doctrine and gospel culture. And those kind of need to walk hand in hand. And if one's lagging in the other, there's something up there, something's deficient, which I think a lot of people are attracted to more gospel culture right now, rather than gospel doctrine. But those need to be hand in hand kind of in your search for a local church. But I remember, I think the first, when I joined the Army back in 2010, and I moved, and I moved back to. I'm not as grouchy as I used to be at that phrase.
You've softened in your old age.
I have. It's kind of like it kind of just rolls off, the back. But so I moved out to Louisville, Kentucky, and I was looking for a church out there. And mind you, this is the first time I had ever made a major move in my life. I was 22 years old at the time, moving across the entire United States to live in a place for about just a little shy than a year, and trying to find a church. Like, that's the first thing that I was praying for, is to find community. Because I knew I couldn't do life without the church. I couldn't do life with other Christians. I couldn't do that. So I was praying a lot about that. I had found a church that at the time was both Acts 29 and SBC affiliated, which is kind of a rare breed these days.
That's a double barrel shotgun of
but I think, honestly, as much deficiency as there might have been in doctrine and stuff like that, I think I was more focused on finding other Christians, and some of you are in cultures where that's kind of what you need to do. You need to find other Christians, and you need to find somewhat decent local churches in order to do that. They might not hit every tick mark that you're looking for as far as particulars. But sometimes that's kind of what you need in the moment. And then I honestly did not start to look for what I would say, more robust, I guess, churches. Although I would say there were times that the churches that I went to in the past, which obviously were both Acts 29 and Mars Hill, were okay-ish on some things, but there were some things that were just not. You could not see the gospel culture in the background, and in the things that were not seen, it was chaos. I think they were good at bringing people together, and some of that gospel doctrine was there, but I don't think it was fully fleshed out. And just the nature of Mars Hill and stuff like that in X29.
Sure.
It was, I don't think it was really until probably when I met my wife and we were about, a couple to a few months, I would say a handful of months into 2021, that we're like, you know what? We've been at this church, and we've met at this church. We got married in this church. I don't know if we really want to stay here because we don't see that gospel doctrine and that gospel culture going hand in hand in a lot of places.
Right.
And so looking for a different church, that was, I'd never kind of done that before in this way. But thankfully, one of my wife's bridesmaids, their church actually had collapsed, unfortunately, during 2020. And they were going to another church that we're all members at now. But really, that was kind of like a place of refuge, to be honest. And I did see more, I would say, more solid biblical exposition being preached. That was probably the most noticeable thing, is that when we visited, the main thing that I saw was just the preaching that was kind of being kind of extolled every Sunday was probably, I mean, I think of it this way. I think my pastors would say we're mediocre at best at preaching. But to me at the time, this was like giving me, grade A chocolate, the finest of all fines, the truffles, everything in like a dessert, and just saying, have at it.
Yeah.
And not trying to pump it up too much, but then you eat it and your just mind gets blown. I think they were going through Gospel of Matthew at the time, and just hearing the pastors like preach was just really refreshing. And at the time too, we were new, and we knew that if we walked into this church, it was going to be weird. We hadn't felt like, newbies in a long, long time. And so thankfully, like, some of the pastors introduced themselves once we sat down and kind of talked a little bit more to us. And so, I guess that's a big thing. Like, when you're looking for a church and when you're starting to kind of seek out a local church, is how are you greeted? How is the preaching? How are people around you? I mean, the people, something like that. That's kind of stuff that you can warm up to. But honestly, for me, it was being welcomed in a way that I never had been welcomed before, to be quite honest. Yeah. And then the preaching and how the application and just the exposition going hand in hand was something that was really just what I needed at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't need a huge. I was used to our previous pastors when the main preaching. The lead pastor, when he would preach, he would try and make it into a big crescendo story and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, I don't need a guy who's taken half the week to work on one sermon. I just need it to be good exposition and it to be solid. And we really found that at our local church that we're members at now.
Yeah.
So if the word is not preached in a way that it is expository, and it's really, I say, doing two things. It's kind of teaching you, and it's preaching to you in this way where you can start to kind of, not to get all charismatic, but to get in a charismatic way, but that the Spirit is illuminating things to you.
Yeah, for sure.
In the preaching of the word. Then yeah, I would say that if that's not happening in a local church, if you haven't visited a local church like that, yeah, that's something I would consider, moving away from and looking something into. But I mean, thankfully we didn't move. I mean, now it takes at max. I mean, we were meeting at our building. Our building was a smaller building, honestly, and it took us 15 minutes to drive to church now.
Yeah.
Or back then, and it still takes us about 12 minutes because we moved to a middle school that's kind of closer to one of the main highways, freeways, kind of in Tacoma area. So yeah, it's just that the main, like, once you hear good preaching, and I feel like the rest will kind of follow.
Sure.
To be quite honest.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I think when you have a local church that's centered around the word, right, it's what it's supposed to be centered around, right? And I think we have a culture, like we were saying at the beginning, good local churches are hard to find. I think we have a culture right now that is, it centers its I would say its identity as a church around something other than the word, right?
Yeah.
And whenever you do that, you're going to create an environment that is not, I would say, effective in doing what the church is supposed to do, right? I think there's a misconception these days that the local church, the local church is for unbelievers, right? So we need to be catering our services in order to attract unbelievers so that they can hear the gospel, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to be welcoming.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong, of course, with having the gospel saturated in your services. I think it should be, right? I think every sermon needs the gospel within it. Otherwise, it's not a sermon, right? But we need to remember that the local church, who it is primarily for, is the body.
Yeah.
It's for the elect. It's for the chosen people of God. Mm-hmm. It's where we go to commune together with the intent of worshiping a holy God. And that is what the local church is for, right? And from the local church, we get our accountability, we get our encouragement, and we get our community, right? We talk about those three things a lot in the past on the podcast, right? Because we need all three of those things. And it's not an exhaustive list, but the three main things that we need as Christians come from the local church, right? So when we think about the local church, the things that we get from the local church are things that we can get in no other place.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say with the effect that it's supposed to have. Yes, you can get community and accountability and encouragement from family. Of course you can. Mm-hmm. I have been encouraged many times in my life by family. And many times in my life, family has been my accountability. And you know, when you grow up in kind of the sticks like I did, family is largely your community, right? But I would say this. I would say that family is not meant to be those things for the Christian. The strongest bond that exists this side of heaven, and I would say into eternity, is the only bond this side of heaven that will extend into eternity.
Yeah.
And that's the people of God.
Yeah.
Familial relations will not last. Marital relations will not last. Right? Brothers won't be brothers. Sisters won't be sisters. Parents won't be parents. The earthly relationships that we have here will pass away. Does that mean that we should just ignore them? No, of course not. Does it mean that we should just not view them as important? No, of course not. Right? We are told to honor our parents in Scripture. We're told to, you know, that the one who doesn't take care of his family is worse than an unbeliever. We have these verses, right? But what we need to remember is that we need to view those things in context, right? And whether it be your family, whether it be, you know, friends that you have, right? The primary relationship that we as Christians should be concerned about is the relationships we have with our brothers and sisters in Christ. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I say that with the caveat that we have said on this podcast before, right? If you are engaging in the local church to the detriment of your marriage or to the detriment of your relationship with your kids, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Because the relationship that you have with your local church should bolster and encourage and strengthen those, right? You shouldn't be putting your wife or your kids on the altar of ministry, right? That's not how it's supposed to be. But the local church should be so important in our lives, so primary in our lives, that we're willing to miss everything else for the most part in order to make the local church priority. And that should be reflected in our family, right? We should be raising our kids to view the local church that way. We should be encouraging our spouses to view the local church that way, so that the local church is not a burden, it's a blessing. Because that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah. Right. And when you have priorities out of whack, again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be important conversations, but I think there's a mentality, especially kind of, maybe where we live, Jack, where we hold a lot of things as more important than the local church. Yeah. And I think when we look into the church, right, we look at the things that we are missing church for, or that we are placing above the local church, right? Our work, right? Are you putting more time and effort into your job than you are the local church? Is your job the thing that causes you to miss the Lord's Day gathering on a regular basis, right? Obviously, if there are exceptions, we understand that. We're not fundamentalists here, right? Obviously, there are exceptions. But on a regular basis, are you missing the Lord's Day gathering because of your job? Are you not able to fellowship and gather with the people because you have so much time and energy and effort into work? All right. Perhaps, and again, it's a greater conversation. I'm not saying I'm not going to be the theological Dave Ramsey and be like,
oh my gosh,
that means that
sell everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Put it into cash. Buy this in cash.
Mr. Blanket statement, right? I'm not going to do that, right? But I would suggest to begin to start to have the conversation. Maybe if you're married, have it with your wife. If you're not married, have it with your pastors. Yeah. Should you be reorienting your life and considering a different vocation that gives you the ability to be with God's people more? Yeah. Okay. Family. That's a big one. That's a sticky one. And that one, I would say, comes with a lot of drama.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because there's a lot of family out there that wants to be priority. Mm-hmm. Okay. I will say, and again, this is something that I've thought of, that is a product of my thinking over the years. All right. And I believe it's a discussion to be had. I'm not going to be obviously dogmatic about it, but I'm going to share with you where my thoughts are with this. Okay. Yeah. My wife is my priority. Right. She is my immediate family. Mm-hmm. Everything outside of my wife, right, is extended family. Yeah. Okay. I do not believe I should be putting the relationship with my wife on the altar of ministry. I believe that those are things that go hand in hand, and there's joy in that. Okay. Mm-hmm. But outside of my wife, for the most part, in the vast majority of situations, barring emergencies and obviously all the things that come into play that I should be caring for my family for, the local church takes priority. Yeah, it does.
And I will say this, I will caveat to what you said.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think this has been a huge encouragement to me, to where our last church didn't have a lot of rhythms. And I think they're starting to get rhythms. Okay, that's fine, whatever. But when we came to the church that we're at now and became members, especially within the last couple of years, there's been rhythms that have been really helpful, that start to solidify that cohesive family of God together in a local church, to know that when you say stuff, or when you speak your mind about things, or when we talk about like really controversial stuff, like, you know, that like you can have like a good conversation out of that. Like, you're not going to be like black sheeped or something like that. And you're going to get poured into. And I think this year is interesting, because with a 9-month-old, and to have stuff Actually, he might be a 10-month-old. I can't remember. Somewhere around there. In any case, I mean, my wife has started to invest a lot in women's groups, and I think that's real. Like, she needs that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me as a husband, like, I need to just step up and take care of my son. And sometimes, honestly, I'll do this too. Like when I visited Josh today, I took my son with me.
It was a lot
You
of
know
fun.
why? Because my wife's like, "Hey, I need a break." Okay, cool. I picked Theo up. I put him in the car, and we went on our merry way, and it was
He
fun.
got to see his podcast uncle, man. It's
Exactly,
awesome.
exactly. So I mean, there's stuff where, like you just said, where the local church comes alongside you, and really, in some ways, kind of shepherds you too. Where members start to become like your mothers, like your grandmothers, like your dads, like your grandfathers, kind of. I think there's people right now that I would look to and I would say, yeah, that's a spiritual brother. That's more of a spiritual father figure over there.
Yeah.
Based on ages and stuff like that. And so, but I really never had that connection with any other local church that I can remember, primarily because I think all too often the size of a local church, if it gets too big, if we get into this whole let's blow this thing up for the gospel and for Jesus kind of mentality, okay, but let's be honest about this. Like, you're going to have to scale this. Like, what do you have in place for discipleship? What do you have in place for community? What do you have in place for these things? You can't just blow these things up and want to grift kind of for Jesus, you know. Your primary way to care for people who are Christians is through the local church. And so how are we going to do that?
Right.
And I think that I've just been really blessed through like men's breakfasts.
Yeah.
I'll take Theo to a men's breakfast because it gives my wife a morning off and he sees other men and he interacts with other men and he sees that and it's a rhythm. Or we go to an event and I bring him along or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's just primary. I think I do that primarily because I want to see my son know what gospel culture is.
Absolutely, dude.
And not just it be a Sunday thing, but that he sees people throughout the week in these rhythms that we do.
Yeah.
And he knows that we're doing these in order to gather together, to be in community, to encourage one another in the faith, to look at the scriptures. And so,
well,
I think
you're showing him from a young age that the local church is a priority.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're showing him even, you know, even before he's going to remember that, hey, we prioritize the local church and we're here. We're not here out of duty. We're not here because out of compulsion. We're here because we love it. And we're here because we know it's good for us. Right. And like, he's going to grow up seeing and experiencing things that like you didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and he's going to have an understanding and I would say an experience with the local church that's so much greater and so much deeper than you did. And you being faithful to show that to him is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because our wives, our children, the primary thing that they need is the local church. It's the same thing that we need. It's the local church, right? Family has its place, and we thank God for that, right? Our employments have our place, have their place, and we thank God for those, right? But the primary thing that we need as Christians on this earth is to be surrounded and committed to the people of God. Because that is where we find our encouragement, our community, and our accountability. That's where we find Christ doing his best work, right? And you making that a priority for your son is 100% the point. Because that's exactly, he's going to grow up seeing that, right? And again, it's not that we don't, it's not that we don't help that, again, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and swing so far in the other pendulum that's like, well, I make the local, church a priority, and, that just means that I'm never going to, help family when they need, or I'm never going to, stay late at work when they need me to, right? That's not what we're saying. All right. It's the spirit of it. Mm-hmm. It's the, I prioritize the local church because I know that's what I'm supposed to do as a Christian, and I know that's what benefits me the most.
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't mean that you can't that you can't stay late at work, on a day, or you don't obviously like help your folks or your brother or your sister move or something like that. That's not at all what we're saying, right? But the local church is the primary relationship that we should have here, this side of heaven, again, because it is the only relationship this side of heaven that will extend into eternity. Your brothers and sisters in your local church are going to be your brothers and sisters in heaven. And I think we need to have that mentality as a church more, so that we don't, gripe at each other when we see the other person committing to the local church. Mm-hmm. Right? That's not something that we gripe at or scratch at or try to dampen in some way. It's something that we encourage, because wow, look, this person values the people of God so much. Look at what they're willing to sacrifice for it.
Yeah.
That's a mentality that I wish so many people had, and I pray that the Lord increases that in my heart, because I see the way that people sacrifice for the local church, and it just leaves me so encouraged, because I see the motivation there. I see that it's out of love, and we need more of that in the local church, not less, right? And exactly what you're doing with Theo, I think that's how it starts. We model that to our kids. We model that to our family. We model that to our coworkers. This person prioritizes the church, and it's different.
Yeah, and you're willing to. I think both of us know this. Like, you're willing to sacrifice some time in order to get there.
100%.
I think I think Josh knows this a little bit more better than myself. I think I've been somewhat. I don't know. There's been a certain grace where the church that I've gone to for the last couple of years has been only 15 minutes away from me around that.
Sure.
Josh has had to have a time where he has had to go back and forth to the church that he's at now, where they've been able to move there into that community. But it was, I mean, I think that, I guess the biggest question that some people might have in their minds is like, when is the time for me to say, okay, I think I need to move for a better local church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, what would that timing be, or what would the situations have to be in order for that, I guess, to come about?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, right? But I do think that my general encouragement is, obviously, if you found the church, right, it checks all the boxes, right? It's theologically sound, it's gospel centered, word centered, has a good community. This is where we want to invest, right? It's time to move closer to that church as soon as the distance is impeding your ability to be in community with ease.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Now, that's going to be different for some people. Some people, that's 10 minutes. Some people, that's 15 minutes, right? My wife and I, again, just because of the situation that we were in, and we were traveling an hour to church.
Yeah.
To the local church that we are currently at. I do not recommend that.
Yeah.
Right. But we knew, and it was very clear. The Lord made it so clear, clearer than he makes most things in my life, that was the place he wanted us to be. So we prioritized it. But we did so with the knowledge and with the agreement that we are going to do everything that we can in our ability, obviously under the sovereignty of God, to get close to our church as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I would say, is if your ability to be in community is inhibited because of the distance, you're too far. And you should have conversations with your spouse, right? You know, or if you're single, with your pastors, with the deacons, have them help you. How do I get closer? How do I get closer to my local church? Because I can tell you from experience, there is so much joy that comes from, Jack knows there's so much joy with being like, oh, something's going on at the church, someone needs help. Yeah, I'm 10 minutes away. I'll be right there. Right? Or, hey, so-and-so, you know, they want to invite you over for lunch after church. Like, oh, yeah, I don't have to worry about tacking an hour onto my day.
Yes,
you know, so-and-so needs some counseling or wants to get together. You know, it's not this huge event to make happen. I'm right here. I'm in the community. I'm amidst my people, right? That should be the goal, right? Now, everyone's situation is different. I understand that. Right, everyone is dealing with different stuff in terms of, you know, all the crazy life factors that filter into that. Right, but I would say this: no matter what your situation is, no matter what those factors are, start making the local church a priority, and work to get to a place to where you are there and within that community with ease, because you will be blessed. And your people will be blessed. And, you know, I would rather not have a great big piece of property, but it means I'm an hour away from church, right? I'd rather not have, you know, this fantastic job, but it means that I'm never with my people. It's a question of priorities, right? Because people like this, we get one life. And then into eternity we go, right? But I don't want to waste this life that I have now by not preparing for eternity. I'm going to be worshiping with amazing fellowship with my brothers and sisters for eternity. Why would you not want to start that now?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to have an eternal perspective, I think. And I think we struggle with that. I know I struggle with that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
For sure.
But an eternal perspective, I think, really helps with this topic, because it really gives you the ability to pull back, get out of the tunnel vision, and ask yourself, okay, what really is the most important? Right? I think it's the local church.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why this podcast exists, right? And you look, I know we need to close this. This is probably worth another ep, but you know,
sure.
you might be listening to this and you think, you know, it's out of whack. Priorities are out of whack. I understand. I would say just know where we're coming from. We're a couple of guys that have been around the block in terms of priorities, been around the block in terms of churches. And this isn't a conclusion that we have come to just kind of willy-nilly because we think it sounds cool. I'll be 100% honest. Making the local church a priority, although I am blessed by it now, it's not something that comes naturally. I would rather make like there is a piece of me that it knows it's so much easier to make other things priority.
Yeah.
Ultimately myself.
Yeah.
Right. That's it is ultimately that. Right. This is an opinion that we've come to and a stance that we've come to over time. And because of the experiences that we've had, and the constant thing that has always been there through it all has been God's people.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth taking at least into consideration.
Plus, it's not the most sexy thing right now.
No,
church
it's not.
membership, belonging to a local church and church membership, let's be honest, I think it's at its lowest it's ever been since before 1950 or something like that. I can't remember. But, I mean, that's to a couple different things that we can talk about on the potluck, but sure. Or in future episodes, what's hindering church membership and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that you know, if you believe at the end of the day, if you are the person, if you're the Christian that is in Josh's position, that's like, I cannot be at my local church anymore, primarily because of, I would say, significant things. Mm-hmm. So if you cannot be at peace with those people because of church government, because of the interactions between pastoral leadership and the congregation. Just maybe even just how maybe there's a disunity between gospel doctrine and gospel culture, like we talked about. And you're just like, I now am kind of like commuting to a church. That's kind of what Josh was doing for a little bit. But, you know, I eventually want to settle into that community. Like be praying, like Josh said, like be praying about that. Like I did before I started to move. Now, obviously, like God provided a people, not the greatest leaders, but God provided a people for me that honestly, I've, you know, one guy that I know right now that's in my local church, him and I have been in the same local church, and we've changed churches now a couple different times, but we've been now, gosh, it's been since 2011, it seems like.
Yeah.
You know, and that's very providential sometimes. And just because, you know, some things don't go well at a local church, sometimes you end up in a place with other believers at a different church to where you're both at peace because you're both on the same level of doctrinal thinking. And you're in a place where it's like, okay, I think this is a good refuge for us to be at and a good place for us to grow and to kind of get our foundation back under us again. Just be praying about those things. You know, I think that prayer is sometimes just kind of pushed back into the background sometimes, but honestly, like there's been so many things to where if you just start praying about these things and lifting them up to the Lord and saying, Lord, just please provide in a way. And that might be your only prayer during a season. God will use that. And there was a time where, you know, right before I was about to leave, you know, the previous local church I was at, it was, I don't know where we're going to be at, but we have to leave. we have to go somewhere. I wasn't super positive about some of the choices that we were going to, you know, some of the churches that we were going to attend, but I was like, you know what? God will find us a people to be a part of. And he did. And it's really been encouraging to have, I think, pastors for the first time tell me things like our congregation and our church is blessed by you and your family.
Yeah.
Like when you have those kind of,
there's nothing better to hear.
When you have that kind of exhortation happen in your life.
Yeah.
And you have not had any of that beforehand.
Yeah.
It brings a different perspective into your life as a believer and how just the local church becomes kind of more than just the Lord's Day service.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%, man. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more that can be said. This is already a mammoth ep. I do think this is worth, you know, coming back to and having a discussion, because I think there's a lot in here. And especially when you're dealing with things like people's vocations, their employment, right? Their careers, their family, right? You always want to take care in having those discussions, because you can't just come and say, you know, you should sacrifice your job for the local church, sacrifice your family for the local church. You can't say that, right? Because again, that's not what we're saying. We're talking about priorities, right? And we're talking about not the letter of the law, the spirit of it, right? What is the intent? What's the motive in the heart, right?
Yeah.
So again, all of those things worth having even more discussions about. But we hope that you guys hear where we're coming from. We hope that you hear kind of the heart behind these things, and that we truly say these things because we believe you will be blessed. I can tell you from experience. I have experienced what happens when I make the local church priority in my life. It is the greatest blessing, and has been the greatest blessing for myself and my wife. It truly has. And I truly believe that it will be the same for you. It might be scary. It might take some hard conversations, right? But they are the best conversations. Because the local church, the people of God, I don't believe there's anything more worthy of shaping your life around. Because man, it's nothing better. There's nothing better. But Jack, my friend, it's a mammoth episode. Did not mean for it to go this long, but that's what happens when you get us talking about the local church.
Put a nickel in us.
We just you put a nickel in us, man, and it just doesn't stop. Exactly. But let's throw a pin in it right here, my man, and let the people go. So why don't you please, my friend, get us out of here?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you appreciate Josh and I's encouragement to you to make the church, the local church, central to your life as a Christian, as a believer in Jesus, you can follow us and you can ask us questions in regards to our convictions about the local church, how to make it central to your life, questions about, if that day comes, if you need to move because the place that you're at as far as a local church goes is not the place to be at right now, and you need to have those conversations. You can send us a DM, send us a message through the sociables, if you will. You can put comments to us on those sociable sites. You can shoot us a episode idea, anything along those lines. You can find us at the Metaverse, the Facebook, if you will. The Instagram goes well with chocolate and marshmallow, and the sociable, formerly known as Twitter, X. Right. I still have to.
I call
it sounds
it
like drugs. It sounds like drugs.
He's on X. He's been on X for a while.
Anyway, you can find us all at those platforms at the tag at Reformatory Pod is our name under all of those sociable names. And then, Josh, you can tell the lovely people how they might join us on the Podluck.
Oh, the Podluck. That's right. Well, we do have a Podluck. We also have YouTube, and you can get on YouTube as well. We post videos. I believe this will actually go up on YouTube now. I think we have the capability for video because our technical problems, I believe, got sorted out. But a big paycheck later. Anyway, we'll just leave that there. But head on over to YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications, get notified when new episodes come out. That'd be awesome. Rate us on Apple Podcast, review us on Apple Podcast. We would truly appreciate that. Say whatever you want, share a story, share a joke, whatever you feel like, as long as it's 5 stars. 5 stars for 5 solas. That's what we ask. And as Jack has already mentioned, we have the Podluck, and that's what we call our Patreon, our all access, in which you receive bonus episodes, you receive first crack at any video content, you receive main episodes early. There's a reformatory chat that we have a lot of fun in, sharing cigar picks and pipe picks and things that are going on at work. It's a blast. Our Patreon community is really cool. We really enjoy them, and all of that and more can be yours for a $5 holla, $5 a month, less than a Starbucks drink in the morning. All right? All of that can be yours. And if you choose to do so, our pledge to you is that your name shall be hallowed.
Hallowed, sir. Hallowed.
Hallowed through the halls of the podcast. That is our pledge to you, dear friends. We thank you all for listening, and we will catch you on the next step of the Reformatory.